Commander Alex led her infiltration team through the mountains of the Korean peninsula with practiced efficiency. She was a veteran of 17 covert operations across the galaxy, and her team consisted of the Empire's best intelligence operatives. Their stealth suits bent light around them, making them nearly invisible to human sensors. Nearly, but not completely. Alex knew they had been detected during landing, but so far no human forces had moved to intercept them. That bothered her more than if they had been attacked immediately. The team moved through the darkness, following seismic data and power consumption patterns that suggested a massive underground facility beneath the mountains. Human civilization was surprisingly advanced for such a young species. Their cities glowed with electric light. Their communications networks spanned the globe, and their orbital defenses, while primitive by Imperial standards, showed clever engineering. These were not the simple primitives the Empire usually encountered. After 6 hours of careful approach, Alex's sensors detected an entrance disguised as a mining operation. Security cameras swept the area, but they were obvious and easy to avoid. Too obvious, Alex thought, too easy. She signaled her team to halt and reconsidered the situation. Everything about this felt wrong. Either human security was incredibly incompetent, or they were being allowed to proceed. Given the sophistication of the weapon data they had received, Alex doubted incompetence was the explanation. "They want us here," she told her team through encrypted communications. One of her subordinates, a young scout named Rethik, questioned this assessment. Why would they allow enemy infiltrators to reach their most secret facility? Alex studied the entrance with her enhanced vision, seeing the layers of defensive systems that could have stopped them at any point, because they want us to see something. They want us to report back. We proceed, but we assume everything we see is meant for our eyes. The team bypassed the outer security systems and descended into the facility through maintenance tunnels. The deeper they went, the more impressive the human construction became. 3 kilometers of solid rock had been excavated and reinforced with materials that could withstand nuclear detonations. Power conduits carried enough energy to run a small city. Environmental systems maintained precise atmospheric conditions throughout the complex. This was not a hastily built bunker. This was a project that had consumed massive resources over many years. They emerged into a main corridor and immediately froze. The facility was enormous, far larger than anything suggested by surface surveys. 17 separate laboratory complexes branched off from central control rooms. Through windows and sealed doors, Alex could see equipment that made her blood run cold. Nanite production chambers, each one capable of manufacturing trillions of microscopic machines per hour. Quantum computers running simulations that showed infection patterns spreading across galactic star charts. Genetic databases containing samples from every known spacefaring species in the Empire. Rethik's voice trembled slightly as he scanned the laboratories. "Commander, this is real. The weapon exists. It's not a bluff." Alex moved deeper into the facility, her mind racing through tactical implications. If humanity actually possessed this weapon, if they had the capability to deploy it, then the Empire faced an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. Not stronger or more advanced, but desperate enough and clever enough to threaten mutual extinction. They found scientist Minji in the central control room, surrounded by holographic displays showing real-time data from the weapon systems. She didn't run when she saw them. She didn't call for security or raise an alarm. She simply turned around and looked at them calmly, as if she had been expecting them all along. "You came to verify the weapon is real," she said in perfect galactic common. "Let me show you." Alex kept her weapon ready but signaled her team to hold fire. Minji walked them through laboratory after laboratory, explaining the weapon's function with clinical detachment. She showed them containment vessels filled with billions of nanites, glowing with a soft blue light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. She displayed test results from experiments conducted on alien biological samples captured from meteorites and space debris. The nanites had adapted and spread through the samples within minutes, evolving faster than any defense could respond. In one sealed chamber, Minji activated a demonstration using a controlled sample of alien bacteria. The team watched through reinforced glass as nanites were introduced to the culture. Within seconds, the bacteria began to die, their cellular structures breaking down at the molecular level. Within minutes, every organism in the chamber was dead. The nanites continued to replicate, searching for more targets, adapting their programming to be more efficient. "It learns," Minji explained quietly. Every generation becomes better at killing. Once released, it spreads exponentially. Your ships would carry it home. Your colonies would be infected before anyone knew what was happening. Rethik was visibly shaken. Why would you build something like this? This isn't a weapon. This is genocide on a galactic scale. Minji's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. Exhaustion? Regret? We didn't want to build it, she said softly. But your empire has conquered 73 species. 73 civilizations that no longer exist as independent peoples. What choice did we have? Submit and lose everything that makes us human? Or build something so terrible that you wouldn't dare attack us? Alex studied the human scientist carefully. There was no deception in her voice, no hint of bluffing. This woman had spent years, possibly decades, developing this weapon. She understood exactly what it would do if deployed, and she was willing to activate it if necessary. Is the weapon armed now? Alex asked directly. Minji met her gaze without flinching. The activation sequence takes 12 hours. Once started, it cannot be stopped by any means. No abort codes, no override commands, nothing. We designed it that way deliberately. That doesn't answer my question, Alex pressed. Minji smiled slightly, a cold expression that held no warmth. The moment you entered our solar system, we began preparations. Whether the weapon is armed now, or will be armed soon, or can be armed at any moment, does that really matter? You saw the laboratories. You saw the production chambers. You know we have the capability. Do you want to bet your entire species on the timing of our activation sequence? Alex realized this was the message humanity wanted delivered to the Empire. Not just that the weapon existed, but that Earth had the will to use it. These humans were not warriors by nature, but they had become something perhaps more dangerous when cornered. They had created a doomsday device and stood ready to pull the trigger if necessary. Mutual destruction as a deterrent. A concept the Empire had never encountered before because most species valued survival above all else. We need to see the activation controls, Alex said. Minji led them to a heavily secured chamber in the heart of the facility. Inside, a simple interface displayed the activation sequence. 3 separate authorization codes were required, and Minji explained that the codes were held by 3 different individuals who could not be coerced or intimidated into compliance. Even if you killed me right now, Minji explained, even if you destroyed this facility, the weapon would activate automatically. We've built redundancies throughout the system. Deadman switches that deploy if Earth's population drops significantly, if communication with the facility is lost, if any of the authorization holders are killed. It was brilliant and terrifying in its simplicity. Humanity had built a weapon that guaranteed retaliation even if they were defeated. There was no way to win against Earth without triggering the very destruction the Empire sought to avoid. Alex realized that conventional military thinking was useless here. This wasn't about strength or tactics. This was about whether the Empire valued conquest more than survival. I need samples, Alex said. Proof to show the Imperial Science Corps. Minji nodded and provided sealed containers holding inactive nanites, along with complete technical documentation. Take everything you need. We want your scientists to verify that this is real. We want everyone in the Empire to understand what happens if you attack us. Spread the word to every species you've conquered. Tell them that Earth has created something that can destroy you all. As the team prepared to leave, Rethik asked one final question. If this weapon is so terrible, how do you sleep at night knowing you built it? Minji was silent for a long moment before answering. I don't sleep well. None of us do. But I have a nephew who is 5 years old. He laughs and plays and dreams about becoming a pilot someday. I built this weapon so that he can grow up free, not as a slave to an empire that cares nothing for him. If that makes me a monster, then I accept that judgment. But I will not apologize for protecting my people. The infiltration team left the facility and returned to their extraction point. Behind them, Minji stood in the control room surrounded by machines capable of ending countless billions of lives. She touched the activation interface gently, feeling the weight of what she had created. Hyuk joined her a few minutes later, and they stood together in silence, 2 people who had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Commander Alex returned to the Sovereign's Fist 12 hours after infiltrating the human facility. She carried sealed containers holding samples of the nanite weapon and terabytes of technical data copied from Earth systems. When she entered Admiral Taven's command chamber, she found the senior staff waiting for her report. The Admiral studied her face carefully and saw something he had never seen before in his veteran intelligence officer. Fear. The weapon is real, Alex said without preamble. She placed the containers on the analysis table and began uploading the data to the ship's main computers. Everything in the human transmission was accurate. The facility exists, the weapon exists, and they have the capability to deploy it. I estimate they could activate the system and release the nanites within 12 hours if they haven't already done so. The tactical officer who had dismissed the human threat earlier leaned forward skeptically. You saw the weapon with your own eyes? Not simulations or propaganda, but the actual device? Alex nodded firmly. I saw production chambers capable of manufacturing trillions of nanites per hour. I saw quantum computers running real-time simulations of galactic infection patterns. I saw test demonstrations where the nanites destroyed alien biological samples in minutes. The science is sound. The technology is functional, and the humans are absolutely willing to use it. Science advisor Korvax began analyzing the samples immediately, running them through every scanner and analyzer the Empire possessed. The results appeared on the main display and the room fell into shocked silence. The nanites were more sophisticated than anything the Empire had created. Their programming operated at quantum levels that made conventional defenses useless. Each unit could self-replicate, adapt to new biological targets, and share information with other units across vast distances. Release even one into the Empire, and within weeks it would be everywhere. Admiral Taven dismissed his staff except for Korvax and Alex. When they were alone, he spoke quietly. Give me your honest assessment. Can we destroy this weapon before it deploys? Alex considered the question carefully. Possibly, but the risk is catastrophic. The facility is buried 3 kilometers underground with multiple redundant systems. Even our most powerful weapons would need sustained bombardment to penetrate that deep. During that time, the humans would certainly activate their weapon. And according to their scientists, they've built deadman switches throughout the system. Destroy the facility and the weapon launches automatically. Korvax added his analysis to the discussion. Even if we could somehow destroy the facility instantly, the humans implied they have redundant systems elsewhere. We would need to locate and destroy every backup simultaneously, while preventing any human from activating the weapon manually. The probability of success is less than 15%. The probability of triggering deployment is over 80%. Taven paced his command chamber, his mind working through scenarios that all ended in catastrophe. What about targeted elimination of the human leadership? Remove those who control the weapon. Alex shook her head. They anticipated that strategy. The activation codes are distributed among multiple individuals. Kill them and the dead man switches activate. The weapon was designed specifically to ensure retaliation, even if Earth is completely destroyed. The Admiral realized with growing horror that his empire had no good options. Attack Earth and trigger galactic extinction. Negotiate and show weakness that might encourage other conquered species to develop similar weapons. Withdraw completely and accept that a primitive species had defeated the mighty Vrelian Imperium without firing a shot. Every choice led to unacceptable consequences. News of the situation spread through the Imperial fleet and then leaked to the broader government. Emergency councils convened across Vrelian space as military leaders, politicians, and scientists debated the unprecedented crisis. Some generals argued for immediate attack, claiming the humans were bluffing about deadman switches and redundant systems. Others called for negotiation and containment, isolating Earth but leaving it alone. A few radical voices suggested destroying Earth from maximum range with planet-killer weapons and accepting the consequences. On Earth, President Jiwan addressed the United Earth Council and the entire global population through emergency broadcasts. She revealed Project Revenant to the world, explaining the impossible choice humanity had faced. Submit to slavery or build a weapon that threatened everyone. The reaction was mixed and passionate. Some people called her a hero who had saved humanity. Others called her a war criminal willing to commit genocide to maintain independence. General Taehyung, commander of Earth's conventional military forces, led the opposition to the weapon. He stood before the council and argued passionately against threatening mutual destruction. What separates us from conquerors if we're willing to exterminate billions of innocent lives? He demanded. The Vrelian Empire is evil because it enslaves other species. But we're proposing something worse than slavery. We're threatening extinction for entire civilizations that have done nothing to us. Jiwan listened to his arguments carefully before responding. You speak of morality, General, and I respect that. But morality is a luxury afforded to those who have the power to choose. Without this weapon, we have no choice at all. The Empire would conquer us, absorb our culture, erase our identity. Our children would grow up as subjects, forbidden to govern themselves or pursue their own destiny. Is that moral? Is allowing our species to be enslaved somehow more ethical than threatening those who would enslave us? The debate raged across Earth for days. Engineer Deho, who had helped build components for Project Revenant, publicly denounced the weapon and called for its deactivation. He appeared on news programs explaining his role in the project and his deep regret. "I thought we were building a deterrent," he said with tears in his eyes. "I didn't fully understand we were building something that could end all life in the galaxy. This is wrong. This has to be stopped." Protests erupted in major cities. Some people demanded the weapon be armed and deployed immediately to show strength. Others demanded it be dismantled completely, even if that meant accepting imperial rule. Humanity fractured along ideological lines divided by fear and conscience. The unity that had briefly emerged during the initial crisis collapsed into bitter arguments about survival versus morality. Director Hyuk became the face of the weapon, the symbol of humanity's dark pragmatism. Death threats arrived daily, both from humans who viewed him as a monster and from alien sympathizers who promised his execution. Security details protected him constantly, but Hyuk barely noticed. His mind was focused entirely on the weapon and the terrible responsibility it represented. He had become the guardian of humanity's worst impulse, and he knew history would judge him harshly regardless of the outcome. Late one night, Hyuk sat alone in the control room deep beneath the mountains, his finger resting near the activation interface. He thought about Suman, his daughter who barely recognized him anymore. She flinched when he tried to hug her, seeing a stranger where her father used to be. The weapon had cost him his relationship with his child, and he wondered if that was just the first price he would pay. The holographic displays showed real-time tracking of the Vrelian fleet. They hadn't moved closer, but they hadn't retreated either. Both sides were frozen in a deadly standoff, neither willing to back down but both terrified of what would happen if they pushed forward. Hyuk pulled up the activation sequence one more time, studying the simple interface that controlled the fate of countless billions. 3 authorization codes, 12 hours to full deployment, no abort option once started. Hyuk held one of the codes. Scientist Minji held the second. The third was held by President Ji-won herself. All 3 would need to agree before the weapon could launch. It was designed that way to prevent any single person from making the decision alone. But Hyuk wondered if that made it better or worse. Sharing the burden of genocide didn't make the act less monstrous. Minji entered the control room and found him staring at the activation interface. She sat beside him without speaking for a long time. Finally, she broke the silence. "Do you think we'll actually have to use it?" Hyuk didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was tired. "I don't know. I hope not. But hope isn't a strategy." They sat together in the control room, 2 people who had crossed lines that should never be crossed, waiting to see if their terrible creation would save humanity or doom the galaxy. Above them, millions of people argued about morality and survival. But down here in the darkness, surrounded by machines of extinction, Hyuk and Minji understood a truth that most people refuse to accept. Sometimes there are no good choices. Sometimes survival requires becoming what you hate. Sometimes the only way to protect what you love is to threaten everything else. The countdown continued. The fleet remained in orbit, and humanity held its breath, waiting to see if their bluff would hold or if they would have to prove that their warning was no empty threat. 11 days after the Vrelian fleet arrived in Earth's orbit, Admiral Taven requested direct communication with humanity's leadership. The Imperial High Command had spent those days in endless debates, analyzing every possible scenario and finding no acceptable solution. The humans had built a trap with no escape, a weapon that guaranteed mutual destruction if anyone moved against them. Now it was time to see if negotiation could succeed where force would fail. President Ji-won, Director Hyuk, and scientist Minji stood before the holographic projection system in Geneva. When the connection activated, Admiral Taven's massive form appeared before them, his scaled features unreadable. For a long moment, neither side spoke. Then the Admiral broke the silence. "You have accomplished something no species has done in 200 years, he said quietly. "You have made the Vrelian Empire afraid. Jiwan responded with careful diplomacy. We do not wish to inspire fear, Admiral. We wish to live free. Your empire offered us only slavery or death. We created a third option. Taven nodded slowly. Yes, you created mutual extinction. A solution so terrible that even conquest becomes pointless. I have been authorized by the Imperial High Command to negotiate terms. We propose a treaty. Our fleet will withdraw from your system. Earth will be granted autonomous protection status within Imperial space. In exchange, you will never deploy your weapon and never share the technology with other species. Hayuk stepped forward before Jiwan could respond. His voice was firm and unyielding. Autonomous protection is not acceptable. That is simply delayed conquest. You withdraw now, develop countermeasures, and return in 50 years when you believe you can stop our weapon. We will not accept any solution that leaves Earth under Imperial authority in any form. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. You ask for complete sovereignty? For a species that has barely left its own solar system, to dictate terms to an empire spanning thousands of worlds? Hyuk met the alien's gaze without flinching. We ask for what we have proven we can take. If you attack us, your empire dies. That makes us equals in the only way that matters. We demand true sovereignty, formal recognition that the Sol system is neutral territory, and an exclusion zone that no Imperial vessel may enter without permission. Taven was silent for a long moment, calculating the implications. Granting these demands would set a precedent that could inspire other conquered species to resist. But refusing might trigger the very weapon he was trying to avoid. What guarantee do we have that you won't use this weapon to attack us once we withdraw? He asked. This time Minji spoke up, her voice carrying the exhaustion of someone who had lived with terrible knowledge for too long. We don't want to use this weapon, Admiral. Building it nearly destroyed us morally. Using it would make us monsters. But understand this clearly. We will use it if you give us no choice. Leave us alone and Earth has no reason to threaten anyone. Force us to choose between freedom and extinction, and we will choose to take you with us. Hyuk added something that changed the nature of the negotiation entirely. Furthermore, we demand that the Empire spread word of our weapon throughout the galaxy. Not as a threat against other species, but as a warning. Any civilization that threatens humanity will face the same response. We want every species in the Empire to know that Earth has created something that makes conquest impossible. Let them decide if freedom is worth the same price we paid. Admiral Taven understood immediately what Hayek was proposing. Earth wanted to become an example, a precedent that would make other conquered species question whether they too could resist. It was a dangerous idea that could destabilize the entire Imperial structure, but the alternative was worse. You ask for much, Taven said carefully. Perhaps too much. Then Hayuk made a confession that shocked everyone in the room, including Jiwan and Minji. He had calculated that honesty might succeed where continued bluffing would fail. Admiral, I'm going to tell you something that could destroy us. The weapon is not currently armed. It takes 12 hours to activate from authorization to full deployment. We have been operating on the credible threat of activation, not on having the weapon ready to fire at this moment. The chamber erupted in shocked silence. Minji looked at Hayuk with wide eyes, unable to believe he had revealed their greatest vulnerability. But Hayuk continued calmly, explaining his reasoning. However, what we do have is a dead man switch. The weapon activates automatically if Earth's population drops by more than 30%. If this facility is destroyed, or if any of the 3 authorization code holders are killed. You could attack us right now, kill us all, and you would still trigger the weapon. It would deploy automatically and spread throughout your fleet before you escape the system. Taven listened carefully, his strategic mind analyzing this new information. Hyuk was right. Even knowing the weapon wasn't currently armed didn't change the fundamental equation. Any attack on Earth would trigger deployment. The dead man switch was brilliant and terrible in its simplicity. You are a clever species, the Admiral said quietly. Too clever for your own good, perhaps. Clever enough to survive, Hyuk replied. That's all that matters. Now let's discuss terms that allow both our species to continue existing. The negotiations continued for 6 weeks. They were difficult, tense, and nearly broke down several times. Other alien species were brought in as neutral mediators, civilizations that wanted no part of humanity's doomsday weapon. Slowly, painfully, a treaty began to take shape. The Treaty of Sol would grant Earth complete sovereignty, establishing the solar system as neutral territory that no Imperial vessel could enter without explicit permission. The Empire agreed to spread information about Earth's weapon throughout the galaxy, though they framed it as a warning rather than encouragement. The treaty included provisions for trade and diplomatic contact, but strictly on equal terms. Earth would not be a subject world or a protectorate. It would be recognized as an independent power, protected not by military strength, but by the credible threat of mutual destruction. When the treaty was finally signed, the Vrelian fleet withdrew to the edge of the solar system and then jumped to hyperspace. Humanity watched them go with mixed feelings of relief and regret. They had won their freedom, but the cost had been their innocence. They had proven themselves willing to threaten genocide, and that knowledge would forever change how humanity saw itself. 5 years passed. Director Hayek now represented Earth in interstellar diplomacy, negotiating trade agreements and cultural exchanges with species that viewed humanity with a mixture of respect and horror. The weapon remained in its facility, neither armed nor dismantled, a sleeping god that guaranteed Earth's security. Some still called Hayek a hero, others called him a monster. He had learned to accept both titles as equally true. The weapon's reputation spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. Humanity became known as the species that built something so terrible that even mentioning it made empires reconsider their expansionist policies. Explorer ships from Earth ventured into the cosmos, and wherever they went, they were treated with cautious respect. No one wanted to test whether humans were bluffing about their willingness to deploy their ultimate weapon. The Galactic Empire endured, but changed. Its expansion halted as conquered species began questioning whether they too might develop deterrence. Some worlds attempted to create their own weapons, though none succeeded. The technology required was too advanced, the resources too expensive, and the moral burden too heavy. Earth stood alone as the species willing to cross that line. Yuk often visited Minji in her laboratory, where she continued refining the weapon's design. Not to use it, but to ensure that potential adversaries knew it could never be defeated. She had aged visibly over the years, the weight of what they had created pressing down on her shoulders. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she asked during one visit. Hyuk didn't answer immediately. When he spoke, his voice was tired but certain. "We did the necessary thing. Whether that makes it right, I'm not sure we're qualified to judge." On a quiet evening in Seoul, Hyuk finally returned home to find his daughter Sumin waiting for him. She was 12 now, studying galactic history in school and learning about the crisis that had defined humanity's emergence onto the interstellar stage. She had questions, difficult questions that had no easy answers. "Dad," she asked quietly, "did we become the monsters to stop the monsters?" Huck sat beside her and thought carefully about how to respond. He could give her comforting lies, tell her that everything they did was justified and necessary. But she deserved the truth, however uncomfortable it might be. "I don't know," he admitted. "We built something terrible to protect ourselves. We threatened billions of innocent lives to save our own. Does that make us monsters? Maybe. Does it make us survivors? Definitely." Sumin considered this for a long moment. "At school they teach us that you're a hero who saved humanity." Hayek smiled sadly. "And what do you think?" His daughter looked at him with eyes that were too old for her age, eyes that had grown up in a world that knew it possessed the power to end civilizations. "I think you did what you believed was necessary. I think you made terrible choices because all your choices were terrible." The stars had never seemed so close, yet so far away. Captain Minho Kim stood on the bridge of the Horizon's Promise, watching the massive station grow larger in the view screen. It was unlike anything humanity had ever built. The Galactic Council's headquarters stretched for hundreds of miles, a gleaming construct of impossible metals and flowing energy fields that seemed to bend reality itself. Minho had trained his entire life for this moment. First contact protocols, diplomatic procedures, and countless simulations. But nothing prepared him for the weight of representing all of humanity before civilizations that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. Ambassador Ji-won Park stood beside him, her hands clasped behind her back. She wore the formal blue uniform of the United Earth Diplomatic Corps, with the planet Earth embroidered over her heart. She looked calm, but Minho noticed the slight tremor in her jaw. She was nervous too. "We're being hailed," said the communications officer. "Open the channel," Minho ordered. The view screen shifted. A face appeared, if it could be called a face. The being had 6 eyes arranged in a circular pattern, and its skin shimmered with colors that hurt to look at. It spoke, and the translator device rendered its words into something humans could understand. You are the humans. You will dock at Bay 17. You will present your petition. You will be judged. The transmission ended abruptly. Ji-won let out a breath. Not exactly friendly, are they? They've been in charge for 50,000 years, Minho said. I suppose they can afford to be rude. The docking procedures took 2 hours. When they finally stepped off their ship, they found themselves in a corridor so vast that clouds formed near the ceiling. Thousands of beings moved through the space, representing species from across the galaxy. Some walked, some floated, some crawled on multiple limbs. None of them paid any attention to the human delegation. A guide met them, a tall creature with blue skin and too many joints in its arms. It led them through maze-like passages to the council chamber. The chamber was a sphere, with the council members positioned around the walls so that every direction was both up and down. Gravity seemed optional here. Minho felt his stomach lurch as they were guided to a platform in the center. Humans. A voice boomed from everywhere at once. State your purpose. Ji-won stepped forward. She had prepared her speech for months, refining every word. She spoke of humanity's achievements over the past 3 centuries. She showed holographic displays of Earth's cities, of the colonies on Mars and Europa, of the fusion reactors that powered their civilization. She presented their first faster-than-light engine, still crude but functional. She spoke of human art, music, literature, and philosophy. We come in peace, she concluded. We seek to join the community of spacefaring civilizations. We offer our friendship, our knowledge, and our commitment to the common good of all intelligent life. Silence filled the chamber. Then laughter. It started small from 1 or 2 council members, then spread. Soon hundreds of beings were laughing at the human delegation. A new voice spoke, deeper and colder than the first. It belonged to a massive creature that looked like it was carved from living stone. You speak of peace? Your species has been at war with itself for your entire recorded history. You speak of knowledge? You have barely learned to leave your own star system. You speak of commitment? You cannot even unite your own planet under one government. We have made mistakes, Ji-won said, her voice steady despite the humiliation, but we have learned from them. We are better now than we were. We will continue to improve. You are children, the stone creature said. Its name, the translator provided, was Thelzorin, and it held the position of Primarch. Dangerous children playing with weapons you do not understand. Your faster-than-light technology is unstable. Your fusion reactors are primitive. Your society is fractured and violent. Every species in this council started somewhere, Minho interjected. You all had your primitive stages. You all made mistakes. Yes, Thelzorin agreed. And many species never survived their primitive stages. They destroyed themselves. They burned their worlds. They unleashed technologies they could not control. The council exists to prevent such tragedies, to guide younger species toward enlightenment. Then guide us, Ji-won pleaded. We want to learn. We want to grow. Some species, Thelzorin said slowly, are not ready to be guided. Some species need time to mature, time to prove they can be trusted. The council has reviewed your case. We have studied your history, your culture, your technology. We have reached a decision. The chamber fell silent. Every eye, every sensor, every unknowable sense organ focused on the human delegation. The council votes unanimously. 847-0. Humanity is rejected. The words hit like a physical blow. Ji-won swayed on her feet. Minho felt his hands clench into fists. Furthermore, Thelzorin continued, humanity is hereby placed under Quarantine Directive 7. You will not expand beyond 50 light-years from your home star. Any human vessel that crosses this boundary will be destroyed without warning. Any attempt to contact other species will be considered an act of aggression. You will remain in your designated space until such time as you prove yourselves worthy of joining the galactic community, if such a time ever comes. This is insane, Minho said, anger finally breaking through his diplomatic training. You can't just cage us like animals. We can, Thelzorin said. We have. You are dismissed. The platform beneath them began to move, carrying them back toward the exit. Ji-won tried to speak, to argue, to plead, but no one listened. The council members turned away, moving on to other business. The humans meant nothing to them. The journey back to the Horizon's promise was silent. The crew could tell from their faces what had happened. When they finally left the station and jumped back toward Earth, Minho sat in his captain's chair and stared at the streaking stars. 50 light years, he said quietly. Do you know how many stars are within 50 light years of Earth? About 2,000, Ji-won replied. She had composed herself, but her eyes were red. Most of them are unsuitable for life. Maybe a dozen have planets we could potentially colonize. They've put us in a cage, Minho said. A small cage. They've made a mistake, Ji-won said, and her voice held something new. Not sadness, not anger, but determination. They think we're too violent, too primitive, too dangerous. They think we'll destroy ourselves. What if they're right? Ji-won looked at him and she smiled. It was not a happy smile. Then we'll prove them wrong. When they reached Earth 3 weeks later, the news of the rejection had already spread across the planet. Protests filled the streets. Some demanded retaliation. Others called for submission. The United Earth Assembly convened an emergency session. President Sun-Ho Lee addressed the world from the Assembly Hall in Geneva. We have been rejected, he said. We have been judged and found wanting. The Galactic Council has placed humanity in quarantine, expecting us to wither and die in our cage. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. I say we prove them wrong. I say we show them what humanity can do when pushed into a corner. We will not beg for their approval. We will not wait for their permission. We will forge our own destiny among the stars. The assembly erupted in cheers. The countdown clock showed 48 hours remaining when Director Hyuk stood before the recording equipment in the secure communications room. Behind him, President Ji-won watched silently along with several military advisors. The data package from Project Revenant had been prepared and verified by 3 separate teams of scientists. Everything was ready. This single message would either save humanity or doom the entire galaxy. Hyuk adjusted his collar and faced the camera. His expression was cold and controlled, showing no fear or hesitation. When the recording began, he spoke in perfect galactic common, a language that Earth's linguists had decoded from captured alien transmissions over the past decade. His voice was steady and calm, as if he were discussing something as simple as weather patterns instead of mutual extinction. Admiral Taven of the Vrelian First Fleet, this message is for you and your empire. You have given humanity 72 hours to surrender. We reject your ultimatum completely. However, we do not do so out of foolish pride or ignorance of your power. We reject it because we possess something that makes your threat meaningless. Hyuk paused and brought up the technical data on screens beside him. Complex biological diagrams and mathematical models filled the display. What you see here is a weapon system that humanity has developed over the past 50 years. We call it Project Revenant. It is a self-replicating nanite swarm designed to target alien biology at the quantum genetic level. The attached files contain complete specifications, test results, and predictive models showing exactly how it functions. The data scrolled across the screen, showing infection patterns and spread rates. Hyuk continued without emotion. If you attack Earth, this weapon will activate automatically. It cannot be stopped once deployed. The nanites will infect your ships, your crew, and every alien organism they encounter. Your ships will then carry the infection back to your worlds, spreading it throughout the Empire. Based on our calculations, every non-human species in the galaxy will be extinct within 5 years of deployment. Hyuk leaned closer to the camera, and for the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not fear, but a terrible determination. We are not warriors by nature, Admiral. We did not want to build this weapon, but you gave us no choice. Understand this clearly. If humanity dies, you all die. This is not a threat. This is a mathematical certainty. Your move, Admiral. The recording ended. Hyuk stood there for a moment longer, then turned to face President Ji-won. She looked older than she had just hours before, the weight of what they had done pressing down on her shoulders. Will they believe it? She asked quietly. Hyuk considered the question carefully. The data is real. The science is sound. Any competent xenobiologist will verify that our models are accurate. Whether they believe we've actually built it and armed it, that's the gamble. What Hyuk didn't say out loud, what only he and Minji knew, was that the weapon wasn't actually armed yet. It would take 12 hours to activate the system, and once started, there would be no way to stop it. They were bluffing with a gun that wasn't loaded, betting everything that the Vrelians would believe it was pointed at their heads right now. If the aliens called their bluff and attacked immediately, humanity would die before the weapon could deploy. The transmission was sent through every communication channel Earth possessed, beamed directly at the Vrelian fleet. Then everyone waited. On the surface, people watched the skies with fear and hope mixed together. In cities around the world, some people rioted while others prayed. The news networks showed the alien fleet hanging in orbit like a sword about to fall. Nobody slept that night. Aboard the flagship Sovereign's Fist, Admiral Taven received the transmission with several of his top officers present. They watched Hayek's message in silence, then reviewed the attached data files. The Admiral's tactical officer, a veteran of 40 successful conquests, dismissed it immediately. "Primitive bluffing," he snarled. "This species barely achieved orbital flight 50 years ago. They cannot possibly have developed weapons like this." But Taven's science advisor, an old strategist named Korvax, was not so certain. He had spent 3 hours reviewing the human data, running it through the Empire's most advanced analytical systems. When he finally spoke, his voice was troubled. "Admiral, I believe this weapon is real." The other officers erupted in protests, but Korvax raised his hand for silence. "Look at the mathematics. Look at the biological models. This is not the work of primitives. This is elegant, sophisticated, and absolutely terrifying." Korvax brought up projections on the main display, showing infection patterns spreading across galactic maps. If even half of their predictions are accurate, releasing this weapon would be catastrophic. The nanites are designed to adapt and evolve faster than any biological defense can respond. They would spread through trade routes, military transport, civilian vessels. Within 1 year, every major world in the Empire would be infected. Within 5 years, extinction. Admiral Taven studied the data with growing unease. He had conquered dozens of worlds, faced weapons that could level cities, fought enemies who would rather die than surrender. But this was different. This wasn't about winning or losing a battle. This was about the survival of his entire species, and every other species the Empire had brought under its control. "What are the chances they're bluffing?" he asked quietly. Korvax hesitated before answering. "The technology required to build this weapon is advanced, but not impossible for a species at their development level. Humans have shown remarkable innovation in their short history. They went from primitive flight to orbital stations in less than a century, from basic computers to quantum systems in even less time, if they focused all their resources on a single project for 50 years, kept it absolutely secret, operated it as the insurance policy against exactly this situation, then yes, they could have built it." The Admiral stood and paced the command deck, his clawed hands clasped behind his back. Every instinct told him this was a bluff, a desperate gamble by a weak species facing impossible odds. But instinct had killed many commanders who underestimated their enemies. "Can we verify if the weapon exists?" he asked. Korvax nodded. "We would need to send infiltrators to Earth's surface, locate their research facilities, and confirm the weapon's existence directly." Taven made his decision quickly. "Suspend the ultimatum clock. Deploy Infiltration Team Gamma to Earth's surface. Their mission is to locate and verify this alleged weapon. Do not engage human forces unless absolutely necessary. If they find nothing, we proceed with orbital bombardment. If they find the weapon is real, we'll discuss our options." He turned to face his officers, his expression grim. "Until we know for certain, we treat this threat as legitimate. No ship attacks Earth without my direct authorization." Back on Earth, Defense Coordinator Boyoung detected the alien infiltration within 3 hours of the team's landing. The Vrelians had advanced stealth technology, but they didn't know that humanity had been tracking asteroid movements and space debris with obsessive precision for decades. When 6 objects that looked like meteors suddenly changed course and descended toward the Sea of Japan, every sensor in Earth's defense network focused on that location. Boyoung immediately contacted Hyuk with the news. "We have 6 alien operatives on the surface heading inland toward the Korean peninsula. Should I deploy interception teams?" Hyuk considered this carefully. If they captured or killed the infiltrators, the Vrelians might assume humanity had something to hide and attack immediately. But if they let them continue, the aliens might discover the truth about the weapon's status. Then Hayek made a decision that went against every tactical instinct. "Let them come," he ordered. "Do not intercept. Monitor their movements but allow them to reach the facility." Boyoung was shocked. "Sir, if they discover the weapon isn't armed yet, our bluff fails completely." Hyuk's voice was firm. "No. If they see the facility, see the weapon, see everything we've built, they'll know we're not bluffing about having it." Whether it's armed right now doesn't matter if they believe we can activate it before they can stop us. It was a desperate gamble, but everything about this situation was desperate. Hyuk returned to the underground facility and found Minji coordinating with her team. "We're going to have visitors soon," he told her. "Vrelian infiltrators. I need you to show them everything." Minji's eyes widened in shock, but then understanding dawned. "You want them to see how real the threat is?" Hyuk nodded. "Sometimes the best way to convince an enemy is to show them the knife at their throat." As the Vrelian team moved closer to the facility, Hyuk initiated the activation sequence for Project Revenant. Not to deploy it, but to bring it online. To make the containment chambers glow, to make the computers run their simulations, to make everything look ready to launch at a moment's notice. When the aliens arrived, they would see humanity's doomsday weapon in all its terrible glory. They would understand that Earth's warning was not empty words, but cold, hard reality. The stage was set. The players were in position. Now everything depended on whether the Vrelians would believe what they saw, and whether they valued their empire more than their pride.